After Ezra, we're gonna talk about book of Nehemiah. But before that, we need to see this story. Probably everyone heard at least one time Esther, the Queen Esther, right? So Queen Esther is related to those people, the exile. So we're gonna talk about that. So Esther's story is kind of long, so I'll try to summary and then move faster. But yes, but it's fun story. So let's review. Let's listen to God's word. So let's move on. All right, unmute yourself. We have new Bible verse for this period. So let's read. 1, 2, 3.
The
And
God
the
of
God
all
of all
grace,
grace,
who is
who is
near
near
to
to
glory,
glory,
Christ,
eternal glory, yet suffered a
suffered a
while,
little while,
and make you
will
strong for himself
for
and you,
you
and
and
make
you,
your
and
feet
make your
firm
feet
and
strong
stand.
and
That's
stand.
right. First
Chapter
Peter
5,
chapter
verse
5, verse
Peter
10.
5, 10.
Amen. All right. So he say, I highlight here. Yeah, he said, after you have suffered or a little, so he's saying, yo, you're gonna suffer a little bit. But then he say, I will restore you, make you strong, firm, and steadfast. All right. So we are talking about still this captivity, right? Under first Babylon. Now in which country? Start with P.
Persia?
Yes, Persia. So we're gonna talk about Persia. So we're gonna meet in this main story. There are 4 main characters. Of course, Queen Esther and his cousin Mordecai. They are Jewish people. And King Ahasuerus. Also, his Greek name is Xerxes. Have you ever heard of it? The King Xerxes. Yeah. So and then this bad person named Haman. So with this 4 people story, so we're gonna talk about this King Persia, right? Medes Persia. This whole region is amazing, great empire. So Jerusalem, the Jewish people, they were under Persian, right? So, and this story happens in Susa, in one of the palace of King Xerxes. Anyway, so one day, King Xerxes having feast for 7 days. It's a long and amazing, great feast. So he was so happy, and then he called one of his servants, like, "Oh, bring my queen," because he has a really beautiful queen. So he wanted to show to all the people in the feast. So it's like, "Oh, bring the queen." But then something happened. Queen didn't want it to join. Didn't want to join. So he's like, nah, I'm not gonna go, right? So it's king order. King is the law itself, but then this a queen disobedient, right? King is like, so everyone's like, oh, she's in trouble, dun dun dun, right? So everyone's like, you can just be quiet. You have to do something with. So queen, everyone's supposed to obey and obedient to this king, but now queen is kind of rebellious. So everyone say, you have to make, you have to kick her out so that, everyone think, yes, every wife submit to their husband. That has to be the rule, and then that has to be law. So he made this law, say, okay, I will let my queen go, but then I will find another submissive, a better queen. So he made this announcement, like, oh, all the beautiful ladies in the country. Now king is looking for his wife. So please apply, right? It's kind of beauty contest. Anyway, so this is Mordecai. He's a Jewish person, but in exile. So we're in Persia, right? So all the exile moved to Persia, and he's one of them. So he told his cousin Esther, because she was gorgeous, beautiful. Everyone's like, she's beautiful. Her actually, Esther means a star, so a shining star. So everyone's like, and not everyone's like, Mordecai asked her, you should apply. But think about it, they're Jewish people, like kind of slave to Persia. But then they were, all the people had to apply. So Mordecai asked Esther, of course, all the pretty girls, tall girls, skinny girls, all those girls, like, okay, I want to be queen, I want to be queen, I want to be queen. And they gather. And of course, the story goes, the winner goes to, and Esther also went into palace. But then to be queen, they had to prepare for 1 year, like putting perfume, washing their bodies, and then having nice like etiquette, learn all those like, as a queen, those customs, all those things. She got trained for 1 year. Yes, Hui, do you have a question?
Isn't she already queen?
No, not yet. Sorry. it does. Don't get deceived by her, the band. So she's not queen yet.
I know
But now, so this is like her getting trained for 1 year. So like getting washed and then having perfume and then learning all those like etiquette and all those things. After 1 year, of course, the winner goes to Esther. So Esther became a queen. Ta-da! King Xerxes loved her. He really liked her. But anyway, this is another story. So we're changing the scene. We have to know this story of Mordecai. So Mordecai is the doorkeeper. So he's keeping the door for Xerxes. So one day he was working like as a doorkeeper, but these two people kind of tried to kill the King Xerxes, but they didn't know Mordecai was listening. So they were like, kind of made a bad plan. And Mordecai told Esther, who's queen, right? And then Queen Esther told Xerxes. Of course, they got captured. Dun, 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 they got killed. So Mordecai did really great work. So if he didn't tell Esther and Esther didn't tell Xerxes, he would have died, right? So, but then Xerxes somehow, he didn't give him a word or anything. It just it passed by. Anyway, that's the one, like you have to remind yourself, like you have to keep in mind. So that was one incident of Mordecai. Anyway, now we're moving on to Haman. He's a bad guy. He has lots of money. That's why he's so prideful. So he wanted to be worshipped by God. So he made this law saying, okay, when I pass, everyone bow down. What? But anyway, he had that power. So Mordecai, of course, he's a Jewish people. Like Daniel, they don't bow other than who? God, right? So other than God, we're not supposed to bow or worship. So he refused. So because he remembered the law of Moses, you don't worship idol, right? Other than God. So Haman, whenever Haman passed, Mordecai never bowed down. He just like stood still and then just like he didn't do anything. So Haman was so upset. He was angry and he made this a bad plan again. It's like, how can I get rid of this Haman? And then he was like, he thought about this idea. Now, if the king made the rule that if no one bowed to king, then the ruler, then he will get in trouble and he might get killed. So he went to the king and he gave so much money to the king, and King Xerxes like, okay, Xerxes, you're the highest person in the world. Of course not, but he was deceiving him and say, why don't you have this law that everyone bow, everyone worship you whenever something happens? So Xerxes bring him more money, and then he changed his mind. Finally, Xerxes when he heard, it's like, oh, that sounds good. Because I'm the king of Persia. So the law is announced. Of course, Mordecai, he didn't change his mind. So rather he worship or like kind of accommodate or adjust his rule, he prayed God by this way. They put the sackcloth. Do you know the sackcloth, right? The ugly, rough, like very, it's not cloth like a fabric. And then he put ashes on his head. So whenever something happened, these Israel people like put them on those kind of like the sackcloth and then pray God, right? Have fasting. And of course, one of the servants of Esther saw him and he told Esther, it's like, Esther, Mordecai is having sackcloth and put on ashes on his head. So I was like, and more, he asked his servant, she asked his servant to check that out, what's going on. And Mordecai wrote a letter to Esther telling, you have to think about your people, right? Your people is about to die. So you have to do something for your people. And of course, she was meditating the word, and then she prays like, please pray for me so that I have courage. Although she was queen, but going to the King Xerxes and then telling him, it's like, oh, actually, by the way, I'm from Jerusalem, and I'm kind of like Jewish person, but like, where our people's gonna die. Do you think like Xerxes like, oh, let me do something about it? Probably not, because it's just like they're like slaves, one of the slaves. So it's like Esther was so nervous, and then she didn't have enough courage. But after pray, fasting, and of course she like kind of made a plan. So okay, let me make this plan. So one day she went to a king, and then she was asking him, but then King Xerxes loved Esther, right? So I say, oh, my Queen Esther, I could give anything for you. What do you want? And then she said, instead of, okay, can you kill Haman? And because he's gonna kill my people. Instead of doing that, she was actually inviting Haman and King to the banquet. So Haman, of course, like, whenever he passed this door, the palace door, because Mordecai's always there, he got upset. So Haman, on the other side, had a kind of like good idea, discussed with his wife, like, oh, Haman's so annoying. What should I do? Right? And then he's like, his wife said, oh, why don't you make the pole, and then you hang him there, and everyone kind of like sees, oh, this is the result of disobedient kind of thing. So like, he made this little, and then he made this pole for Haman, the Mordecai, right? But anyway, this is another night. King Xerxes couldn't fall asleep. It's like, oh, I cannot sleep. Oh, did I have too much caffeine? No, this is my joke. But anyway, so he couldn't sleep, of course. So he called his scribes or his servant and said, okay, can you find some fun story? Usually for king, they're the reading the history, the old previous work, and that's their kind of fun story, the kind of fairy tale. So it's like the servant was like reading the word, and then dun dun dun, this Mordecai, the one who saved his life, that basically his diary. So someone was reading, okay, this person Mordecai told Esther, and then this whatever assassinator or the plan got killed. Dun dun dun. So that the section came up, and I was king's like, oh, did I like reward Mordecai? And of course, he didn't say directly, but he said no one did anything for him. So at that point, the Haman came up to him, it's like, oh, your majesty. And then King Xerxes was asking Haman, it's like, Haman, what should I do that he did a great thing for a king? So the Xerxes is referring Mordecai, but Haman thought, like, is he gonna give me a gift? It's like, oh my gosh, like, what should I do? What should I do? He probably was like, oh my God. And then he was like, oh, probably, okay, all right, let me think about it. And then he told us like, oh, why don't you give him a nice clothes and then put on a horse, and then you leading this person in the whole village, that so that no one, everyone knows that he's the second highest person in the Persia, right? So he made this rule. Say, Haman thought, like, it's me, right? Okay, I'm gonna be the person. But anyway, so he came back, and Esther now invited Mordecai, and not Mordecai, Haman and King Xerxes. And then she was like, okay, all right, have a good food. Yeah, she didn't tell at front, like, Mordecai, the Haman, oh my God, hater, but she was kind of like being wise, and then she kind of reserved herself. And second night, not first night, but second night, she invited them again, and then she was telling all the the bad plan of Haman. Of course, king was upset. You tried to kill my queen, right? So he really upset. Of course, Haman's like, oh, please, queen, save me. But, she already know the Haman's bad plan for Mordecai. So she was like, kind of like, he tried to grab her. I was like, oh, please save me. But then somehow Xerxes saw this moment. So he thought the Haman's like kind of like sexually abusing Esther, Queen Esther. So even he got more upset and he was like, kick him out. And like he was like, what should I do with him? And one of the servants said, actually, Haman made this pole to kill Mordecai. I mean, hang the Mordecai. Why don't you use that for Haman, right? So, of course, the Xerxes made a rule for all the Israelites, all the Jewish people can worship their God, and also, and he put Haman hang on the pole, and also he brought Mordecai, who's the one who literally saved his life, and as the Haman suggested, he put him in a nice clothes. Nice clothes, and then he put on the horse, and then he made the second highest person in Persia. That's the end of story. It's fun, right? Well, it's like dramatic, but it's fun. All right, that's the story. Let's quick review. It was kind of long, so let me summarize. So Esther became a queen, but then this Haman person tried to kill Jewish people. So Mordecai prayed, and Esther made a plan, and Haman died, and Mordecai got lifted, right? That's the story, right? So now we're moving on to our story. Don't you remember, like, is it a similar story that who make themselves and a kind of like high person, like they try to be a monster? Where did we hear this story? Do you remember anything, something like this? A monster who wants to be like the highest person? No one?
The devil.
We heard
Yeah, the
about
devil, the monstery. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one is from Daniel. Remember Daniel's dream? There was a 4 major monsters. So we talked about it. Anyone who wants to become God, but they're not God, right? They're the monsters. So it's like Haman. Haman is the one who trying to like put himself up, and then he wants to be this a god, right? He want to get worshipped and he want to get lifted, right? So a similar story. And then this king tried to kill, this Haman tried to kill Mordecai, who's righteous, right? So it's same thing. The monster later captured Jesus, who is innocent. So now this Mordecai about to die, like Mordecai, Jesus is there. But instead of Mordecai got lifted, but he wasn't the Messiah, but Jesus is lifted. And probably monster thoughts like, oh, I kind of like, oh, I'll be the second great person. But the plan got flipped. So after Jesus' death and resurrection, now he's in heaven at the right hand of God, right? So this is the whole story. When you think about this whole story, yes, they're in exile, but God still take care of his family, right? From the point that the Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, God has this plan to save his people. And even exile, God still fulfilling, making his plan forward, right? So same thing. Now we will be saved under this Haman, like monstery looking at the end when Jesus comes back. So this is the story. So when you think about Esther, yes, the story is fun, but think about the aspect that yes, there is a monstery people always like make me worship, like money, fame, success, all those things. Yeah, make me kind of like slave to it and worship it. But no, we have Jesus. Jesus conquer all those monstery words. Now we are still under this sinful world, but one day when Jesus comes back, we will be with him in heaven forever. Okay? So that's the story. All right. Let's pray, and then since we have lots to celebrate, and let's move on. All right. Let me pray first, and then we end with the Lord's Prayer. Ready? Oh, sorry. Okay.